God is silent because He's about to do this. There are moments in life when the silence feels heavier than the pain. When prayers that once flowed easily now feel like they hit the ceiling and fall back to the floor. When heaven seems quiet, distant, unmoved. You replay your words again and again, wondering if you said something wrong, if you believed enough, if you waited long enough. And the question that echoes in the quietest hours of the night is always the same: why is God silent right now? But what if the silence isn't absence? What if the silence is preparation? What if God is silent because He's about to do something so precise, so powerful, so irreversible, that words would only interfere with the work already in motion? Silence has always been the language of creation. Before light broke through darkness, there was silence. Before oceans were named, before stars were counted, before breath entered dust and became a living soul, there was silence. Not confusion. Not chaos. Silence. And maybe that's why silence feels uncomfortable to us, because we associate noise with activity and quiet with neglect. But heaven doesn't work the way earth does. On earth, silence often means nothing is happening. In the spiritual realm, silence often means everything is happening. Think about how seeds grow. When a seed is placed into the soil, it disappears. It doesn't announce its progress. It doesn't give updates. It doesn't prove itself to anyone. In fact, if you dig it up every day to check whether it's growing, you'll kill it. Growth requires darkness. Development requires quiet. Transformation happens underground. And what looks like delay is often protection. What looks like silence is often strategy. There are battles God does not announce because the victory must arrive without interference. There are doors He does not describe because explanation would invite doubt. There are seasons where His voice fades not because He has left you, but because He is repositioning you. Silence is not punishment. Silence is not rejection. Silence is the space where God rearranges everything you thought you needed so that you can receive what you actually do. Sometimes God goes quiet when He's about to change your direction entirely. Not adjust it. Not improve it. Change it. If He explained it beforehand, fear would stop you. If He revealed the full picture, insecurity would argue with it. So He leads you with stillness. He lets circumstances fall apart. He allows people to walk away. He permits plans to collapse. And in that silence, your dependence shifts. You stop leaning on your understanding. You stop leaning on familiar voices. You stop leaning on predictable outcomes. You start leaning on faith. There are moments when God is silent because He is removing noise from your life. The wrong voices. The wrong expectations. The wrong attachments. The wrong identities. You asked Him to elevate you, but elevation requires isolation first. You asked Him to strengthen you, but strength is forged where no one is watching. You asked Him to change your life, but transformation begins when comfort ends. Silence is the filter. Silence separates what is essential from what is excessive. It's surprising how often people confuse silence with abandonment, when in reality silence is often intimacy. Think about the moments when words aren't necessary. When two people understand each other so deeply that presence alone communicates everything. God's silence is not empty. It's full. Full of alignment. Full of movement. Full of orchestration you can't see yet. Heaven doesn't panic. Heaven doesn't rush. Heaven doesn't explain itself to anxiety. There are things God cannot do loudly because they must happen quietly. Some breakthroughs must arrive unnoticed until they are complete. Some shifts must happen internally before they ever show externally. Some prayers are answered not by addition, but by subtraction. Not by giving, but by taking away. And when God removes something, He often does it silently, because if He announced it, you would fight to keep what was never meant to stay. Have you noticed how silence sharpens hearing? When the noise stops, even the smallest sound becomes clear. Maybe God is silent because He is training your spiritual hearing. Teaching you to recognize guidance without constant reassurance. Teaching you to trust without visible proof. Teaching you to move without applause. Teaching you to believe without confirmation. Faith matures in silence. There is also a kind of silence that happens right before divine intervention. Before walls fall. Before chains break. Before enemies retreat. Before destinies realign. History is filled with moments where silence came right before everything changed. Silence before the sea split. Silence before the stone rolled away. Silence before the impossible became inevitable. God is not obligated to explain the process when He has already promised the outcome. Sometimes God is silent because He is answering your prayer in a way you didn't expect. You asked for peace, but peace required the removal of chaos. You asked for clarity, but clarity required confusion first. You asked for purpose, but purpose required pressure. You asked for growth, but growth required discomfort. And because the answer doesn't look like your expectation, you mistake silence for denial. What if God is silent because He trusts you more than you trust yourself? What if the quiet is proof of confidence, not concern? Parents don't hover over children who have learned to walk. Coaches don't shout instructions to athletes who know the play. Teachers don't repeat lessons to students who have mastered the subject. Silence can mean readiness. There are also moments when God is silent because words would limit what He is about to do. Language has boundaries. Explanation creates boxes. But God moves beyond definition. Beyond logic. Beyond timelines. Beyond human sequencing. If He told you everything in advance, you would try to manage it. Control it. Predict it. But what He is about to do requires surrender, not strategy. Silence is where faith stops being theoretical and becomes lived. Where belief is no longer borrowed from sermons or songs, but built through endurance. Where trust is not emotional, but intentional. Where hope is not loud, but resilient. Silence reveals what you truly believe about God when there is no immediate reward for believing. And here is something few people talk about. Sometimes God is silent because He is waiting for you to stop asking for signs and start becoming one. To stop waiting for permission and start walking in obedience. To stop listening for thunder and start responding to whispers. To stop expecting rescue and start embracing responsibility. Silence invites maturity. If God answered every prayer instantly, faith would never grow. If every step was explained, trust would never deepen. If every season made sense, dependence would never develop. Silence stretches you, expands you, refines you. Not to break you, but to build capacity for what's coming next. There are doors God is about to open that cannot be opened by noise. There are shifts happening behind the scenes that require stillness. There are alignments forming that need patience. There are blessings being prepared that would overwhelm the version of you that existed before the silence began. So God waits. Not because He is slow, but because He is precise. And when the silence breaks, it often breaks suddenly. Without warning. Without build-up. Without explanation. One moment everything feels stagnant, the next moment everything moves at once. That's how divine timing works. Quiet preparation followed by undeniable manifestation. If you're in a silent season right now, don't rush to fill it. Don't numb it. Don't escape it. Don't assume it means you've been forgotten. Sit in it. Listen within it. Grow through it. Because silence is not empty. Silence is pregnant with purpose. And one day, you'll look back and realize the silence wasn't God withholding. It was God working. Rearranging. Protecting. Strengthening. Preparing you for a version of life you couldn't have handled before. You'll realize that what felt like delay was actually divine alignment. What felt like absence was actually intimacy. What felt like nothing was actually everything. If this message reached you at the exact moment you needed it, if it spoke to a quiet place in your heart that words rarely touch, don't keep it to yourself. Someone else is sitting in silence right now, questioning their faith, doubting their worth, wondering if heaven still hears them. Be the reason they don't give up tonight. Like this video so the message can travel further. Share it so the silence in someone else's life becomes hope instead of fear. Subscribe, not just for content, but to stay connected to reminders that faith still works even when heaven is quiet. And remember this as you move forward, God is not silent because He has nothing to say. God is silent because what He is about to do will speak for itself. And even after the breakthrough comes, after the door finally opens, after the answer becomes visible, there will still be moments when you remember this silence more clearly than the noise of victory. Because silence changes you in ways success never can. Success celebrates outcomes, but silence transforms character. Silence teaches you how to stand when nothing is applauding you, how to believe when nothing is proving itself to you, how to stay obedient when obedience feels unrewarded. That is why some of the strongest believers you will ever meet are not the loudest ones, but the quiet ones who survived seasons where God said nothing and still chose to stay faithful. There is a reason the most dangerous moments for your faith are not storms, but waiting rooms. Storms force you to pray. Waiting tempts you to quit. Storms push you toward God. Waiting tests whether you'll stay when He doesn't speak. And yet, waiting is where the deepest roots grow. Trees that grow fast fall easily. Trees that grow slowly survive centuries. God is more interested in your roots than your speed. Sometimes the silence is God teaching you to hear Him beyond feelings. Feelings change daily. Emotions rise and fall. Motivation fades. But faith that survives silence becomes stable, grounded, unshakable. When you no longer need constant reassurance to stay aligned, you've entered a deeper level of trust. When you obey without emotional reward, you've crossed into maturity. And here's something most people never realize until much later: silence is often God protecting you from premature celebration. If what He is preparing arrived too early, it would attract attention before it could withstand pressure. Not everything God gives you is meant to be immediately seen. Some blessings must mature privately before they can function publicly. Some callings must be hidden before they are revealed. Some victories must be quiet before they are undeniable. There are prayers you prayed years ago that are only now aligning with timing, people, and circumstances. Heaven works in layers, not moments. What feels delayed is often layered. One answer stacking upon another, one detail aligning with the next, one unseen movement connecting to another unseen movement. Silence is the glue that holds the process together. And while you wait, God is also shaping how you will carry what He gives you. Because blessing without wisdom becomes burden. Influence without humility becomes destruction. Favor without discipline becomes pride. So He teaches you patience in silence, gratitude in lack, faith in uncertainty, obedience in confusion. These are not delays. These are safeguards. If you feel tired of waiting, you're not weak. You're human. Even the strongest hearts get weary in quiet seasons. But weariness does not cancel purpose. Doubt does not erase destiny. Questions do not disqualify you. Silence is not a verdict. It's a process. You may not hear God's voice right now, but you can still see His fingerprints. In protection you didn't notice. In doors that didn't open. In situations that ended before they destroyed you. In strength you didn't know you had. In peace that doesn't make sense. Silence doesn't mean God stopped acting. It means He changed how He communicates. And when the moment comes, when the silence finally breaks, it often won't sound like thunder. Sometimes it sounds like clarity. Sometimes it sounds like courage. Sometimes it sounds like an opportunity you weren't chasing. Sometimes it sounds like a calm confidence that replaces anxiety. Sometimes it sounds like a simple next step that changes everything. Until then, don't rush the silence. Don't waste it. Don't resent it. Let it do its work. Let it deepen you. Let it strengthen you. Let it prepare you. Because the silence you are enduring today is connected to the strength you will walk in tomorrow. And if this message feels like it found you instead of you finding it, if it feels like an answer without noise, a reassurance without explanation, then don't scroll past it like it meant nothing. This may be the reminder that keeps someone holding on one more day. Like this video so the message can reach someone who feels forgotten. Share it so a quiet heart somewhere in the world remembers that God still moves even when He doesn't speak. Subscribe so you stay connected to truth in seasons when clarity feels far away. And remember this, deeply and without fear, God's silence is never empty. It is full of intention. Full of timing. Full of purpose. And what He is about to do will make every quiet moment worth it. And even after everything shifts, after the waiting ends and movement begins, you will realize that the silence was not something you survived, but something that rewired you. It taught you restraint in a world addicted to reaction. It taught you discernment in a culture addicted to noise. It taught you endurance when quitting would have been easier. Silence trained you to carry weight without collapsing under it. There are people who only believe when God is loud, but there are others who learn to trust Him when He whispers through circumstances, timing, and inner conviction. Those are the ones who walk with quiet authority. They don't need to announce their faith because it shows in how they respond, how they forgive, how they wait, how they stay aligned even when nothing seems to be happening. Sometimes the silence exists because God is closing chapters without argument. He doesn't explain every ending because some explanations would reopen wounds that need to heal. Some goodbyes must happen quietly so your heart doesn't keep negotiating with what is already finished. Silence helps you release without resentment. And sometimes God is silent because He is watching what you do with what you already know. Not every step requires new instruction. Some steps require obedience to what was already revealed. Silence tests whether you will move forward with the last truth you were given or remain frozen, waiting for a new one. There is a sacredness to silence that only those who endure it understand. It strips away performance. It exposes motives. It reveals whether your faith was built on results or on relationship. And when the silence ends, you don't just receive answers, you receive alignment. One day, you will tell this story differently. You won't say, "That was when God abandoned me." You'll say, "That was when God refined me." You won't remember the fear as much as the growth. You won't remember the confusion as much as the clarity that followed. You won't remember the waiting as wasted time, but as necessary preparation. If you are still in the quiet, don't mistake the stillness for stagnation. Don't confuse calm with absence. Don't equate silence with loss. Heaven is not silent because it is empty. Heaven is silent because it is intentional. And if you've made it this far, reading every word, still listening, still open, then this message wasn't random. It met you exactly where you are. So don't let it stop with you. Let it travel. Let it reach the hearts that are questioning, the souls that are tired, the believers who are holding on quietly. Like this video not just with your finger, but with your heart, so this message moves further than algorithms ever could. Share it so someone else in a silent season realizes they're not forgotten. Subscribe so you stay connected to reminders that faith doesn't fail just because heaven is quiet. And carry this truth with you into every waiting room, every unanswered prayer, every silent night. God is not silent because He has stepped away. God is silent because He is about to do something that words could never explain, and when it arrives, the silence will finally make sense. And even after the silence finally makes sense, there will be moments when you miss it, not because it was easy, but because it was honest. Silence strips life down to what is real. No performance. No pretending. No borrowed strength. Just you, your faith, and the quiet decision to keep going even when reassurance was unavailable. That kind of faith doesn't fade when circumstances change. It becomes part of who you are. What silence ultimately teaches you is that God's presence is not proven by volume. Love doesn't disappear just because it isn't announced. Power doesn't vanish because it operates quietly. Purpose doesn't expire because it's delayed. Silence trains your soul to recognize God beyond emotional highs and visible miracles. It teaches you to recognize Him in restraint, in timing, in the unseen. There are people who will never understand this season you're in because they only recognize God when things are loud and obvious. But what is being built in you right now is depth, not display. Stability, not spectacle. Endurance, not excitement. And when life eventually shakes others, you'll stand, not because you avoided silence, but because you survived it. One day, when someone comes to you asking how you stayed faithful when nothing was happening, you won't have a dramatic answer. You'll simply say you learned to trust God even when He didn't speak. And that testimony will be stronger than any miracle story, because it came from consistency, not convenience. Silence teaches you how to sit with unanswered questions without letting them harden your heart. It teaches you how to hope without demanding timelines. It teaches you how to worship without outcomes. And that kind of faith cannot be manufactured, it can only be formed. So if heaven still feels quiet today, don't rush to fill the space. Don't assume something is wrong. Don't conclude that you've been overlooked. Instead, recognize that this silence is shaping a version of you that can carry more responsibility, more clarity, more purpose than before. And when God finally speaks again, whether through opportunity, direction, peace, or breakthrough, you won't panic. You won't doubt. You won't hesitate. Because silence prepared you to move with confidence, not confusion. Until that moment comes, hold on. Not anxiously. Not desperately. But faithfully. Because silence is not the end of the story. It's the pause before precision. The calm before clarity. The stillness before everything aligns. And remember this truth, even when the quiet feels heavy, God never wastes silence. Every moment is measured. Every delay is intentional. Every quiet season is shaping something eternal. And when what He's been preparing finally unfolds, you won't just hear His answer, you'll recognize why He had to be silent all along. And even now, as you continue to sit with this silence, something subtle is happening inside you. You are no longer the same person who first entered it. Your questions are deeper. Your reactions are calmer. Your faith is quieter but stronger. Silence has a way of burning away shallow belief and leaving behind something unshakable. It teaches you that God is not a sound you chase, but a presence you learn to recognize even when nothing around you changes. There is a hidden gift in silence that most people never discover because they leave too soon. Silence reveals who you are when no one is validating you, when no prayer feels instantly answered, when obedience feels unnoticed. It shows you whether your faith was rooted in reward or in relationship. And if you're still here, still listening, still trusting even a little, that means something real has taken root. You begin to notice that silence sharpens your discernment. You start sensing what aligns and what doesn't. What drains you and what strengthens you. Who belongs in your next season and who was only meant for the last one. God doesn't always remove people loudly. Sometimes He simply grows you until certain connections no longer fit. Silence creates that growth without confrontation. And slowly, without drama, without announcements, your inner world begins to change. Anxiety loses its grip. Desperation softens. Comparison fades. You stop chasing signs and start recognizing patterns of grace. You stop asking, "Why isn't God speaking?" and start asking, "What is He shaping in me right now?" This is where faith becomes personal. Not inherited. Not borrowed. Not inspired by others, but owned, lived, chosen daily. Silence becomes the place where your belief is no longer dependent on outcomes, but anchored in trust. And here's the quiet truth most people only realize in hindsight: the silence didn't delay your life, it protected it. It kept you from running into things unprepared. It kept you from answers you weren't ready to carry. It kept you from versions of yourself that would have collapsed under the weight of what you asked for. When the next chapter opens, it won't feel rushed. It will feel right. When clarity comes, it won't overwhelm you. It will steady you. When God moves, it won't confuse you. It will confirm what silence has already taught you. So if today still feels quiet, let it be quiet. Let it work. Let it form you. Let it finish what it started. Because silence is not where faith dies, it's where it deepens. And one last time, carry this with you gently but firmly: God is not silent because He has forgotten you. He is silent because He is focused. Focused on timing. Focused on alignment. Focused on preparing a future that fits the person you are becoming. If this message gave you peace instead of noise, strength instead of answers, hope instead of fear, don't let it stop here. Like this video so it reaches someone else sitting in a quiet room, wondering if heaven still listens. Share it so another heart learns that silence is not rejection. Subscribe so you stay connected to reminders that faith still works even when God doesn't speak out loud. And remember, when God breaks His silence, it won't be small. It won't be confusing. It won't be late. It will be exactly what the silence was preparing you for. And as the days pass, you may begin to notice something unexpected: the silence no longer scares you the way it used to. What once felt like emptiness now feels like space. Space to breathe. Space to reflect. Space to become. That is how you know the silence has done its work. When fear turns into patience, when restlessness turns into readiness, when waiting turns into quiet confidence. Silence has a way of teaching you to walk without constantly looking over your shoulder. You stop measuring progress by noise and start measuring it by peace. You stop demanding immediate clarity and start trusting gradual alignment. You stop asking God to prove Himself and start allowing Him to transform you. And somewhere in this stillness, your priorities shift. What once felt urgent no longer controls you. What once felt essential no longer defines you. You realize that not every open door is meant to be entered, and not every closed door is a loss. Silence teaches discernment better than any instruction ever could. There is also a humility that grows in quiet seasons. A recognition that you are not in control, and yet you are deeply cared for. That outcomes are not your responsibility, but obedience is. That timing is not yours to manage, but trust is yours to choose. Silence strips away the illusion of control and replaces it with surrender, not the kind that gives up, but the kind that leans in. And then, without warning, you begin to feel it. Not excitement. Not adrenaline. But assurance. A steady knowing that something is aligning. That the waiting wasn't wasted. That the silence wasn't random. That the season you're in is not permanent, but purposeful. You won't need signs when that moment comes. You won't need confirmation from everyone around you. You won't need to rush or force anything. You'll move calmly, confidently, because silence trained you to trust without panic. And when life finally becomes loud again, when opportunities arise, when answers come, when movement begins, you'll carry the silence with you. Not as a memory of pain, but as a source of strength. You'll remember who you became when no one was watching, when nothing was happening, when God was quiet and you chose faith anyway. That is the kind of faith that lasts. The kind that doesn't collapse when circumstances change. The kind that doesn't fade when emotions fluctuate. The kind that doesn't depend on constant reassurance to survive. So if this silence is still with you, honor it. Respect it. Learn from it. Because one day, you'll realize it was one of the greatest gifts God ever gave you. Not because it was easy, but because it prepared you for everything that came after. And as you step forward, whether tomorrow or months from now, carry this truth gently but unshakably within you: God's silence is never empty. It is filled with intention, wisdom, and timing far greater than your own. And when He finally speaks through action, through alignment, through breakthrough, you will understand why He chose quiet first. If this message helped you stay steady, helped you breathe easier, helped you trust a little more, let it move beyond you. Like this video so it can reach someone still struggling with unanswered prayers. Share it so someone else realizes they are not forgotten in the quiet. Subscribe so you continue to receive reminders that faith doesn't fail just because heaven is silent. And remember, when God is silent, He is not absent. He is preparing something so precise, so purposeful, so perfectly timed, that silence was the only way it could be built. And even after all of this, even after the waiting has reshaped you and the quiet has strengthened you, there will still be moments when the silence returns, not as a test, but as a reminder. A reminder of who you became when you had nothing to lean on except faith. A reminder that you don't need constant noise to feel secure. A reminder that you survived the quiet once, and you can trust God again when it comes back. Because silence is not a one-time season. It appears at the edges of every major transformation. Right before you step into something new. Right before responsibility increases. Right before your capacity expands. God uses silence like a threshold. You pass through it not to lose yourself, but to leave behind the version of you that could not go forward. By now, you may have noticed that you prayed differently. Less panic. More surrender. Fewer demands. More trust. Silence matures prayer. It turns it from a transaction into a relationship. You stop asking God to prove Himself and start aligning yourself with His timing. That shift alone changes everything. And here's the quiet miracle most people overlook: while God was silent, you didn't fall apart. You didn't lose your mind. You didn't lose your faith completely. You didn't stop believing altogether. That means something held you together when answers didn't. That something was grace. Unseen. Unannounced. But active. You are still here not because you figured everything out, but because God carried you through what you didn't understand. Silence did not weaken you, it revealed the strength that was already growing inside you. One day, you will stand in a place you once prayed for quietly. You will experience peace you once begged for desperately. You will walk in clarity you once searched for endlessly. And when that happens, you will finally understand why the silence had to last as long as it did. Not a moment more. Not a moment less. Until that day, keep walking. Keep trusting. Keep choosing faith even when feelings fluctuate. Keep believing even when heaven feels quiet. Because God is never late, never confused, never unsure. His silence is not hesitation, it is precision. And if you're still listening, still present, still open, let this be the moment you stop fearing the quiet and start respecting it. Let it remind you that God works just as powerfully in stillness as He does in miracles. That absence of sound does not mean absence of care. That unanswered prayers are not ignored prayers, they are often prayers being answered in ways you cannot yet see. So don't give up. Don't lose heart. Don't walk away just because it's quiet. The silence is not the end of the story. It's the space where everything is being aligned for what comes next. If this message helped steady your heart, if it gave you strength to keep waiting, if it reminded you that you are not forgotten, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video so the message can reach hearts still struggling in the quiet. Share it so someone else realizes that God's silence is not rejection. Subscribe so you stay connected to reminders that faith still stands even when answers don't come quickly. And remember this, now and always, God is silent because He's about to do something that will make every quiet moment worth it. And even now, right at this moment, as these words settle into you, something gentle is taking place. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet strengthening. The kind that doesn't announce itself, but holds you steady when everything else feels uncertain. That is how God often works, subtly reinforcing you from the inside while the outside still looks unchanged. Silence teaches you how to live without needing everything to make sense. It teaches you to trust the process even when the picture is incomplete. It trains you to keep moving forward without guarantees, without applause, without visible evidence that things are improving. And that kind of trust changes how you walk through life. You become less reactive. Less shaken. Less controlled by urgency. You stop confusing speed with progress. There is a calm confidence that grows in people who have endured God's silence. They don't rush decisions. They don't chase validation. They don't fear stillness. They understand that timing matters more than effort alone. That alignment matters more than intensity. That some things unfold only when you stop forcing them. You also begin to realize that God's silence often saves you from answers that would have harmed you at the wrong time. Not every truth is safe to hear before you are ready. Not every door is safe to open before you are prepared. Not every blessing is safe to receive before your character can carry it. Silence is not cruelty, it is mercy. And while you waited, God was not only preparing the outcome. He was preparing you to recognize it. So that when it arrives, you don't miss it. So that when it shows up, you don't sabotage it. So that when it unfolds, you don't shrink under its weight. Silence builds recognition. It sharpens wisdom. It strengthens restraint. This is why some people receive opportunities and lose them quickly, while others receive them and thrive. The difference is often not talent or luck, but preparation. And preparation usually happens in quiet places, away from attention, away from noise, away from immediate results. If you feel like nothing has changed yet, don't assume nothing is happening. Some changes are internal first. Some breakthroughs begin as shifts in mindset. Some miracles start as peace replacing panic. Some answers arrive as strength instead of solutions. And one day, you will notice that you no longer need God to speak loudly to feel secure. You will know His presence without needing proof. You will recognize His guidance without needing constant confirmation. You will trust His timing without needing explanations. That is not loss of faith, that is growth. So keep showing up. Keep believing. Keep choosing patience over panic, trust over fear, faith over frustration. Even if today looks the same as yesterday. Even if the silence continues a little longer. Even if answers are still forming beyond your view. Because the quiet you are experiencing is not empty time. It is sacred ground. It is where endurance is built. It is where faith matures. It is where your future self is being formed. And if you've stayed with this message until now, if you've felt seen rather than rushed, strengthened rather than pressured, then let this moment matter. Let it move beyond you. Like this video so the message can reach someone else sitting in silence tonight. Share it so another heart learns that God's quiet is not abandonment. Subscribe so you stay connected to reminders that faith does not fail just because heaven is still. And hold this truth close, especially when the silence feels long, God is not silent because He has nothing to do. He is silent because what He is about to do requires perfect timing, and when it happens, you will understand why the quiet had to come first. And when the silence finally begins to lift, it often does so gently, almost imperceptibly. Not with a sudden explosion of answers, but with a quiet sense of direction. A thought that feels steady instead of anxious. A decision that no longer feels forced. A door that opens without resistance. That's how you know the silence has fulfilled its purpose, when movement feels natural instead of rushed, when clarity feels calm instead of overwhelming. You may realize that the silence taught you how to listen differently. Not just for God, but for yourself. You learned which fears were real and which were imagined. Which desires were fleeting and which were rooted deep in your soul. Silence gave you the courage to face yourself without distraction, and that is a rare strength in a noisy world. There is also a quiet courage that grows in waiting seasons. Not the loud kind that announces itself, but the steady kind that keeps choosing faith even when doubt visits. Courage that doesn't demand certainty before moving forward. Courage that trusts God's character more than circumstances. That kind of courage can only be built in silence. And slowly, you begin to see how every unanswered prayer shaped your perspective. How every delayed response refined your patience. How every quiet moment strengthened your resilience. Nothing was wasted. Not the tears. Not the confusion. Not the nights you questioned everything. All of it was shaping you into someone who could stand steady when the future arrived. Silence also teaches gratitude in a deeper way. You stop taking peace for granted. You stop assuming clarity will always be immediate. You learn to appreciate small confirmations, subtle guidance, gentle reassurance. You become thankful not only for what God gives, but for how He prepares you to receive it. And when God does act, when His response finally becomes visible, it often feels inevitable rather than shocking. As if something inside you already knew it was coming. That's because silence doesn't leave you empty, it fills you with readiness. So if you're still in that quiet place, still wondering, still waiting, don't lose heart. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not being tested beyond what you can endure. You are being prepared with intention and care. Carry this truth with you when doubts whisper and impatience rises. God's silence is not neglect. It is design. It is wisdom. It is love working beyond your awareness. And when this season finally becomes a story you tell instead of a place you're standing in, you'll speak of it with gratitude rather than regret. Because you'll know that the silence didn't delay your destiny, it shaped it. If these words have stayed with you, if they've given you calm instead of urgency, strength instead of fear, then let them travel. Like this video so the message reaches someone else navigating a quiet season. Share it so another heart remembers that God is still working even when He isn't speaking. Subscribe so you continue walking with reminders that faith remains powerful even in silence. And remember, always and without doubt, God is silent because He's about to do something that will make the waiting meaningful, the quiet worthwhile, and the trust you held on to completely justified. And now, before you leave this moment, pause for just a second. Not to rush. Not to scroll. But to feel what you're carrying right now. If these words wrapped around your heart instead of just passing through your ears, if they gave you peace instead of pressure, strength instead of fear, hope instead of exhaustion, then this was not just a video. This was a moment of connection. A reminder. A quiet reassurance that you are not alone, and you never have been. If this message spoke to a silent place inside you, please don't let it stop with you. Someone else is sitting in the quiet tonight, questioning their faith, wondering if God still sees them, wondering if waiting is worth it. When you like this video, you help this message travel to them. When you share it, you become part of their encouragement, their reminder, their hope. And when you subscribe, you're not just subscribing to a channel, you're choosing to walk with messages that steady the heart, strengthen the spirit, and remind you again and again that faith still works, even in silence. This channel exists for moments exactly like this. When life is loud on the outside but quiet on the inside, when answers feel far but trust needs to stay close. Every video here is meant to walk with you, not rush you, to strengthen you, not overwhelm you, to remind you that growth often happens quietly, and God is always closer than He feels. So take this with you as a gentle, lasting lesson. Silence is not rejection, waiting is not failure, and faith is not measured by noise. Sometimes the most powerful seasons of life are the ones that look still on the surface but are shaping everything underneath. Thank you for staying. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing, even quietly. Stay connected, stay grounded, and keep walking forward with trust. More messages are coming, and you are always welcome here.